Welcome back to The Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. It's Maria, and today I'm here with Caitlin. How are you, Caitlin?
Hey Maria, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am so good. Can you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Maria. I've been an avid listener of your podcast for some time now, before even it was your podcast. So I'm just so honored to be here. I'm Caitlin. I have a consultancy called KB Digital, and I help nonprofits raise more money, specifically with email marketing.
Okay, and I love asking people this. Did you intentionally go into nonprofit or was it a happy accident?
It was intentional. I actually used to work in the tech industry and wanted to do something more meaningful. So I was in marketing for tech industry and I was selling IT services. And it was really important that whatever next step I took was something that was making a difference in the world and that I was marketing something that I believed in. So that's when I made the pivot to nonprofit marketing.
Nice. I love that. And why email?
Everyone asks me this. So I used to do all things digital marketing. And what I noticed was that all nonprofits really needed help with email. And email was the thing that was bringing in the most money. And so the KPIs and the ROI, the return on investment with email marketing was much higher than any other channel. So that's why I went into email. I also love doing email. I love the fact that it allows me to use my data side of my brain as well as the creative side of my brain. So just it was a really good fit for me and I have enjoyed doing all things email marketing since.
I feel like a lot of nonprofits know that email exists and may already be sending out emails. Are there any kind of common issues that you see with the emails that are being sent out? Like maybe their engagement, the click through rate? What do you look for to know, okay, this email is not going to hit the way that you want it to?
Man, there's so many things. So I do an email audit where I'll look at all the data, the design, the process, look through how emails are rendering in different email clients. There's 100 different ways people can view your emails. So there's a lot of different things that you can look at. But I think the biggest issue is consistency and engagement. Click through rates are a lot lower than what they are in the for-profit industry and the nonprofit industry. And I think a lot of that maybe has to do with the fact that we often have our fundraising seasons, like year-end season, where the goal is fundraising. And then after we finish that, we go dark until the next time we need something. So I think the most common issue I see is that people are forgetting to engage in between those pivotal campaigns when the goal is fundraising. But we need to make sure in between the fundraising campaign that we're engaging with people in new ways.
So, what do you see are the biggest issues when it comes to nonprofit emails? Why are they not hitting as hard as they could?
There's a lot of different reasons, but the biggest issue I see is just consistency with reaching out and communicating with constituents. So we often have these campaigns, and most of the time, the goal is fundraising. So we have our fundraising campaigns, and we're asking for donations during that time. And then we go dark after that until we need something again. And so I always recommend continuing to consistently communicate with your donors and supporters in between these campaigns, in between the times that you need something from them with valuable content.
Mhm. And would that valuable content be coming from like a one-on-one email or can you do that en masse? What do you think is more engaging?
I would say a mixture of both. There is a way that you can automate an email to be drafted to your inbox. So whether you use Outlook or Gmail, what you can do is you can go into Zapier and you can set it up so anytime someone makes a donation, a draft email is then put into your inbox, and all you have to do is go in and enter information, and you can send a one-on-one email. Now, of course, that's gonna be really difficult if you have a lot of donations coming in at year end, but if it's just a one-off or you only have a few trickling in here and there, it's totally doable to do that. And I think it does add a little personal touch to that communication that you might not have when you're doing an automated email. But you also want to make sure that you keep it going with automated emails, following up, letting them know what you're doing, maybe repurposing some content that you've used in the past. That's a really great way to continue that relationship and nurturing.
I find that with a lot of my clients and just like nonprofits in general, like sometimes the question is, what the hell do I put in the emails? Like, is it a monthly newsletter that talks about our programs? Do I tell them I'm hiring? What goes in the emails? So I wonder if you could talk about, best practices, I guess.
Yeah, so I think if you're just getting started, it's a great idea to test some different things out and look at the data to see what are people clicking on and then repurposing that content. And when I say repurposing, it's if you sent an email earlier this year that performed really well, don't be afraid to use that in a welcome series for new donors. These are brand new people who are joining your list. They haven't seen that email before, but it's a great email because you took the time to write it and people clicked on it the first time around. So I think there's a misconception that we always have to recreate the wheel when really you could just look at what performed well. I always start with data, look at your website. Are there blog posts that performed really well, videos that performed? Look at your social media accounts. What are people commenting on? And you can always ask the people on your list too. You can survey them and ask them what type of content are you interested in hearing about? And if you do a mix of those things, you can usually get some insights that will help guide the content that goes within the email.
And do you have a favorite like email service provider?
I get this question all the time. So it's probably whatever email service provider you have right now is fine. I think we all get like shiny object syndrome. Like, oh, maybe if I switch to this new email service provider, then everything is going to be better. And it's a lot of work to migrate to a new email service provider. And especially if we're talking to small nonprofits, if your email service provider right now can send emails and get to the people that you're trying to get to, then that's fine. And work on whatever platform you have now, work on getting that to a good place and then spend some time thinking about, is it time for me to try a new email service provider? MailChimp's great. I have a lot of clients, small nonprofits on MailChimp. I've also worked with larger nonprofits that have platforms that have all in one. And I think that's also a really amazing if you can afford it. Like Engaging Networks is one of my favorites because they have their advocacy, their emails, their donation forms, their CRM is all in one place. So there's no having to integrate or have data passed back and forth. So it just depends. And I know that's an annoying answer, but it's true.
I don't know. I'm just like thinking of the automation side of it, like with the donor series. Some of them don't do that, don't do the automation part. But I do also love the idea of having it all in one spot. That's how I do my own emails actually. I host my website on Squarespace and I also do my emails from Squarespace. So I find that very helpful. But if I had to integrate a CRM with it, maybe that's an additional challenge for a small nonprofit.
Yes, I would say it's an additional challenge, but most of them, like MailChimp, is a smaller platform. It's free up until a certain amount of contacts. So, depending on how many contacts you have, and they have a free integration with most CRMs, and you can use Zapier to connect them, which is a third party technology. But I would say that most email service providers do have the ability to do automations. So that's definitely something you want to consider too.
Okay, I know that you get this question a lot. I can just see it because I've gotten this question 1,000 times. So I'm sure you definitely have. How many emails is too many emails?
I love this question. Okay. Yes, this is my favorite question. There is no such thing as too many emails. And I think that we all have this mindset that we don't want to bother people, but I want to urge you to think about it in a new way. Okay. You are a nonprofit. You are changing the world. You are doing important work. People want to hear about it. They opted into your list. If you're doing if you're doing your opt-ins correctly, they're opting into your list because they want to know what you're up to. They want to hear about the work you're doing and the impact that you're making. And I always say, show me the data. If you think you're sending too many emails, show me the data. Show me, are people unsubscribing? If you have a high unsubscribe rate, then okay, maybe I would say, all right, let's dig deeper into this thought. But most people don't have a high unsubscribe rate. Do you have a high hard bounce rate? Are people like giving you fake emails, that kind of thing? There's usually indicators that this is an issue. And so you're not sending too many emails, especially when it comes to year end or campaigns that are around holidays. People are receiving a lot of emails. And so you do want to try to break through that noise um, in quantity is a good way to do that. I try to tell people your monthly newsletter, that's no longer enough. I would love for nonprofits to send one email a week, but I know that number can scare people. But it doesn't have to be a long email. It can just be a quick update. Take a social post that you created for the week that did performed really well or you thought was interesting. Turn it into an email. It doesn't have to be this long, lengthy produced piece of content.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I was working at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, which for our American listeners is kind of like the Canadian version of ACLU. And there were so many weird police things, like overreach things, like the notwithstanding clause things that were coming up. I was emailing our whole audience every single day. Like if you have something of value to say, I mean, once a week sounds great. I think that's a really realistic, reasonable goal. I know it might sound like a lot because of the content piece, but you should have something to say.
Yeah. And I think that as a small nonprofit, we're talking to small nonprofits, you have a smaller team. So you don't need to have the CEO reviewing or the marketing director and the communications director. A lot of times we get stuck in this. You have so many people looking at it and reviewing it. It's hard to get things out quickly. If you're a small nonprofit and you're one person in the marketing communications team, like, you should be able to churn some things out pretty quickly. And maybe it's just a story about what's happened this week, or maybe it's repurposing something that you did last year, an email you sent last year that you can use again that people will not remember. So just being in the inbox, I think often is very important.
I'm a big fan of reusing some like end of year appeal things from the year before. Like if that email got $18,000 worth of gifts, like I'm reusing it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to fundraising specific emails, do you have like a to do and to don't list? Do you include images, videos, that kind of stuff?
I would say it depends on your audience. I always like to do some A/B testing. I like designed emails, but there is some data out there that suggests that it plain text emails do better. So the more you can make your emails look like they're just plain emails coming from someone within your organization and not a marketing email, the more people are going to respond to it. So a mixture of both. I personally like to add some header images to emails. I think it just connects you to the people behind the words. So I think a combination of both is a really great strategy. You want to make sure that you're including one call to action. If it's a fundraising email, the call to action is to donate. So you should always just be sending people to your donation form and not to a blog post and this event and meet this person. Like the goal is to get people to convert as a donor. So make sure that throughout the email, anywhere you're linking to is to your donation form. I think that's the one most common mistake that I see with fundraising emails.
Yeah, I do see that one a lot actually. Have you started integrating AI into your workflow when it comes to emails?
Yes, I use AI for helping me to create the content for emails. I can write copy, it's not my strong suit. I like strategy, I like production, design, reporting, putting it all together, sending it. I'm a good project manager. When it comes to copy, I can do it, but I have a hard time with getting started. So I use a platform called Cause Writer, and it was actually created by Whole Whale, which is an agency, a marketing agency for nonprofits. And so it's created for nonprofits to use, and you can actually teach it your brand, your tone of voice. You can teach it about your audiences, and you can ask it to help you create outlines for emails. So I don't copy and paste from CauseWriter, but I use it just to help me get started. Or if I'm stuck somewhere, like, give me 3 bullets for this, or I'll feed it information and say, can you help me with the first draft of this email? And it does a really good job. And you can also segment and personalize those emails based off of the audiences. So I would say do not copy and paste from AI or chat GBT or whatever you're using, but you can totally use it to get started and to get ideas. Just make sure that you're reviewing the content and that it makes sense for your campaign. And I love to use it for subject lines too. Subject lines are really difficult to think of. And so you can ask it to, you can feed it your email and say, give me 10 subject lines that you think would perform well. And you might find one that works for you or two that you can A B test. But yeah, I think that we need to use the technology and it's not going anywhere. So why not use it to help make our lives easier?
Have you heard of subjectline.com?
Of course, I use it all the time.
Yes, me too. I use it all the time.
Yeah, and yeah, let's talk about subject lines because I think emails, if they're not open, then then like what's the purpose of them, right? So definitely test subject lines. You could do A/B testing. Every platform has the ability to do that. And make your subject line as if you were talking to a friend. You want it to look like you are a friend and I'm sending you an email, follow up, or something along those lines. Those are always the ones that perform the best.
Yeah, I feel like the subject line is such an ignored part of it. Like the sender, the preview text, and the subject line, but especially the subject line because it has to be such a good hook.
Yeah, it does. Like I said, if it doesn't get open, then what's the point of the email in the first place? So make sure that you do spend enough time on that, as well as your preview text. So the preview text shows up. It's the little snippet that shows up after the subject line. That's also important. Both of those things, definitely spend time creating them before you send your email.
Let's say someone's listening to this episode and they're thinking, like, okay, I think my emails are doing okay, but I don't really know. What are the first steps they can take to assess their email and then some actionable tips?
Sure. So I'll send this to you, Maria. I have an email audit guide that will guide you through the process of reviewing your email program and seeing how it's performing. But I would say, just looking at top line data, my favorite metric is click through rates. So click through rates mean how many people received your email and clicked on it. I don't use open rates usually as a KPI because right now they're just very unreliable because bots are opening emails for us now and saying that a person opened it. But in reality, that's not true. But if someone clicked on your email, then that is proof that they also opened it and they took that extra step to engage with whatever content it is within your email. So you always want to make sure there's somewhere for them to click. That's always a best practice. And making sure you're reviewing those click through rates and seeing how your emails are performing. That's usually the first thing that I look at to see, is the audience engaged or not? And then if the goal is fundraising, then you want to make sure you're tracking how many people are coming from email to your donation form. And that way you can see how each email performed, or even how much money you're generating based off of email. You can do the same thing for social media. You can do the same thing for web. And that will also help you as a small nonprofit decide how much resources you should put into each channel. Because what you'll find is that you probably don't get as many donations from social media. And that will help you realize, okay, maybe I need to spend a little bit more time on making these emails more interesting to get people to click or donate from the emails.
Caitlin, thank you so much for being in this conversation today. I'm wondering where people can find you if they want to get more best practices and tips.
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn usually, so you can find me there and I post daily. I also have an email list. You can sign up for that at caitlinbond.com. And yeah, feel free to email me at hello@caitlinbond.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or send you my email audit guide if that's something you're interested in.
And do you have a welcome series set up for yourself?
Of course I do.
I do. Okay, great. I just want our listeners to be aware of that and be like, what is this welcome series look like for you? And then maybe take some.
Yeah, so it depends on your audience. So if it's a brand new donor, this is a new person that has never heard from you before in the past and it's now on your list. You want to make sure that you're cultivating them with a few different types of emails. So maybe start with 3. They'll receive their donation receipt from you, and that's more of a transactional email. So do not really treat that as like your marketing email. But the next email that you send should be a thank you from your CEO or somebody that they know within your organization, and letting them know how their donation has made an impact. I also say in the second email, that's a good place to introduce a story, an impact story. Maria, I know you talk a lot about storytelling, ethical storytelling. This is where you want to show them how their donation has really made a difference in someone's life. And so you can use a story that you've created in the past and plug that in, letting people know where their donation has gone or is going to go in the future. And then the third email can be more data driven. So you can show them the impact, use your impact report there, show them what you've done and what you plan on doing in the future. And over time, you can build that and add to it. I've even seen people do like a 6-month evergreen welcome series where every week the new donor receives a new email. And so that's a really great way if you have a small team to automate and make sure that you're cultivating people over time and not having to worry about doing that on that one-on-one scale that you talked about before.
Those are all amazing tips. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. I will definitely get that link to the email audit for all of you to go look at. But I hope you start implementing some of these tips. And if you do, let us know. If you want to see our lovely faces, these episodes are always on YouTube, so you can do so there. But that's it for today. Until next time, bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well being. Bye for now.